we're live and on the air, and this is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. And I am Connecticut Minion Ed Dyer. And joining me tonight is, I said Connecticut, okay. Canadian Minion, Dale Liebrecht. How you doing, Dale?
I am doing very, very, very well.
That's good.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, last couple of weeks, Dale has been doing rescue training. Gonna go out and rescue those people out in the Canadian wilderness.
That's right. Sleeping under a tarp. Joy, oh joy.
Ooh, that sounds wonderful. Well, what do we got to talk about today? Well, we're talking about some protein patches that can repair damage caused by heart attacks. We've got a vaccine in development that can help with precancerous cervical lesions. Clinical trials, the first clinical trial, promising. Got a neat little story here about an invisibility cloak. Yeah, it's a teeny tiny one that's actually only microscopic in size, but who knows? I threw this one in because this is the stupid people post. On the Twitters, you've got a hashtag. It's called bear selfie. Then you got these idiots in a park in Denver, and they're trying to get close to the bear so they can take their little selfie stick and take a picture of them with the bear in the background. One guy got as close as 10 feet. Nobody's been killed yet. Nobody's been hurt. But the park people figured, you know, we got to close the park. We don't want these idiots getting mauled or eaten by a mama bear with cubs or something. Just stupid. Interesting story about poor diet and high blood pressure are now the primary risk factors. It says for early death. I take that to mean dying younger than the age expectancy. And I got it in there because really the primary risk factors are things we can control. It's not some fantastic new science or technology. It's stuff we can control. Flower morphology. Good news, progress. California's cutting their water use dramatically in July. Vermont really doing a lot of progress in clean energy. And a few other stories, if in fact we get to them. So I'm going to start with the first one, which I will screen share with you.
All right.
Pressing the right buttons here. And I have hopefully pressed the right button. And Dale, actually, you posted this story on Facebook. And this is Stanford University School of Medicine. And they have enabled damaged heart tissue in animals, it's an animal study, to regenerate by delivering a protein to it via a bioengineered collagen patch. So it's kind of two good news parts to the story. The protein they found, STL1, I believe, and the delivery system, this collagen patch, which is biodegradable. This opens the door to a completely revolutionary treatment. This is Pilar Ruz Lausanne, PhD, University of Stanford. Currently no effective treatment for reversing the scarring in the heart after heart attacks. And in a heart attack, cardio muscle cells called cardiomyocytes die from a lack of blood flow. Replacing these dead cells is vital for the organ to fully recover. Fortunately, the adult mammalian heart does not regenerate effectively, causing scar tissue to form. Consequently, most survivors face a long and progressive course of heart failure with poor quality of life and very high medical cost. Various methods of transplanting healthy muscle tissue into a damaged heart have been tried but have yet to yield consistent success in promoting healing. Previous heart regeneration studies in zebrafish have shown that the epicardium is one of the driving forces for healing a damaged heart. We wanted to know what in the epicardium stimulates the myocardium, the muscle of the heart, to regenerate. So the researcher and his colleagues, they pinpointed a protein called FSTL1. It's a protein secreted by the epicardium as a growth factor for cardiomyocytes. Not only did this protein kickstart the proliferation of cardiomyocytes in petri dishes, but the researchers were surprised to find it was missing from damaged epicardial tissue, finding heart attacks in humans. The researchers set out to introduce the protein back into damaged epicardial tissue of mice and pigs that had suffered a heart attack. They did this by suturing a bioengineered patch loaded with STI1L or L1 to the damaged tissue. The patches were made of natural material known as collagen that was structurally modified to mimic certain mechanical properties of the epicardium. Because the patches were made of acellular collagen, meaning they contain no cells, recipients do not need immunosuppressant drugs to avoid rejection. With time, the collagen material gets absorbed into the organ. Researchers believe the elasticity of the material, which resembles that of a fetal heart, is key to providing a hospitable environment for muscle regrowth. New blood vessels regenerate there as well. And within 2 to 4 weeks after receiving the patch, heart muscle cells began to proliferate, and the animals progressively recovered heart function. So, good news, hopeful, and degree of success with animals.
Yeah, I hope that one works. Having a bad heart would really suck. It wouldn't be a good thing. So, but mice and that's so early. It's funny. You can almost cure everything in mice. I wish I was a mouse.
Yeah, they have a short lifespan though. And with their little fingers, it's probably hard to get on the internet.
Yeah, I bet.
I don't know.
That is a real good one, though. I hope they're able to expand on that and get something in the pipeline.
It's a start. As you said, it means we're likely, even if it were to work perfectly, they've got to go to clinical trials, they've got to get it perfected, so you're still probably talking a decade.
Yeah.
Even if it worked perfectly. But, it's the first step, and you're going to be there. I think we're both going to be there in a decade. So we don't really we can eat all the fatty foods we want, the donuts and stuff. Care. 10 years, this thing is going to cure us, right?
That's right. Keep the dream alive.
And a couple of weeks ago, I did a story, and the primary reason why modern men don't live as long as women is heart disease. So this is perfect. This would be the perfect kind of thing for us.
Yeah, balance things out a bit.
Now, the next story has moved beyond working with animals, and this is a clinical trial with humans. And scientists have used a genetically engineered vaccine to successfully, let me screen share so you don't have to look at the top of my head. Give you something more interesting to look at. Okay. This is from Johns Hopkins Medical School. Every standard therapeutic option for women with lesions destroys part of the cervix, which is particularly relevant for women of childbearing age, who may then be at risk of preterm birth due to a weakened cervix. A vaccine able to cure precancerous lesions could eventually be one way women can avoid surgery that is invasive and can also harm their fertility. High-grade cervical lesions, termed CIN 2-3, occur most often in women 40 or younger. And this is according to a guy named Trumbull, who's with the Kimmel Science Center at Johns Hopkins Medical Center. Because the lesions can progress to cancer, they are usually removed by surgery, by freezing or laser. The procedures are successful in removing the precancerous area in approximately 80% of the women. Less troublesome lesions, called low-grade dysplasia, are usually monitored by physicians rather than immediately removed because they pose less of a less of a risk for cancer and usually regress on their own. Problem being, however, with these methods, they create problems. They weaken the cervix, which create problems for women in childbearing years. For the study, the scientists used a vaccine originally developed by the University of Pennsylvania scientist David Werner, which is engineered by teaching immune cells to recognize precancerous and cancerous cells. Those cells are coated with proteins linked to an infection with two strains of HPV, 16 and 18, that cause cervical cancer. The vaccine, given by injection into the arm, is made by the Innova Pharmaceutical Incorporated, which is funding the study. So they're being very transparent and upfront and letting us know that this researcher is being funded by a pharmaceutical company. And that's important. A lot of studies sometimes hide that fact. Between 2011 and 2013, the scientists recruited 167 women, ages 15 to 55, with newly diagnosed high-grade precancerous cervical lesions. The women were randomly assigned to receive either 3 doses of the vaccine or a saline injection over a 12-week period at 36 hospitals and private gynecology. I butchered that. Gynecology, is that correct pronunciation? I don't know. Gynecology practices in the U.S. and other countries. After each of the injections, the scientists give the women a small electric pulse at the site of the injection, and cells near the electric pulse open their pores, increasing the likelihood that the vaccine will be taken in by the immune system. All right. Of 114 women who received at least one vaccine dose, 55 or 48% had a regression of their precancerous lesions, meaning their lesions disappeared or converted to low-grade lesions, compared with 12 of 40, 30%, who received the saline injection. Of the 114, 107 received all 3 vaccine doses, and 49% of those had regression of the lesion. Of the 40 in the other group, the control group, 36 then got all 3 injections, and 11 of them had regression to the lesions. 13 women dropped out of the study after enrollment, and 2 patients discontinued because they had pain at the injection site. Of the women who completed all 3 injections, scientists could find no, that's all 3 of the injections of the medication. 56 of 107 had no trace of HPV in the cervixes. Of the 56 of the 107 women who received all the injections, compared with only 9 who in the control group. Of these women, the vaccine not only made their lesions disappear, it also cleared the virus from their cervix. In most unvaccinated patients, the lesions went away, but the virus was present, and many still had low-grade lesions. The clearance of the viruses is a significant bonus from receiving the vaccine, because persistent HPV infection is a major risk factor for recurrence of the vaccine. After 12 weeks, doctors surgically removed lesions that did not regress and took biopsies of each study participant's cervix. In the surgically removed lesions, scientists found minimal cancers in 2 of the women who received the vaccine, and the researcher says these micro-invasive cancers are rarely diagnosed by a biopsy, but are only found in surgical specimens. This is a great first step. We showed that the vaccine may enable an immune response in a person whose immune system was not initially engaged or was hampered in some way so as to let the lesion occur.
That's pure magic.
Yes.
Like really, that programming the immune system to go after cancer, and they said that basically it wiped out the cancers for the ones that stuck to the study and did it.
Yes. Not in all, but in most.
Wow.
So, I mean, at this stage, I don't remember the exact clearance rate. Initially, it's something like 50 or 60%. So not 100%. A couple of women had side effects and dropped out. So they want to improve this particular vaccine. But it certainly shows the justification for going on to more clinical trials.
Yep. Yep, that's amazing too.
And it's, go ahead.
Precancerous cervical lesions. I wonder how they actually declare it precancerous, because it means not cancerous, but I guess the cell must mutate just a little bit, but it's not to the point where it's doing, you know, it's still benign.
I don't know how they do it. I know that that's a big issue with men with tumors on their prostate. The difficulty in knowing what's really precancerous, what's the likelihood that the tumor will become cancerous, and as with these women, the tendency might be to remove it and to perform surgeries that are not really necessary.
I always thought the pre-word was funny, because I'm precancerous, I'm pre-diabetes, I'm pre-everything, because it means it hasn't happened yet, right?
Yeah, it's imprecise, but they're getting better ideas, I'm sure, of looking at the cancer you know, looking inside it and whatever, and saying, okay, here's, they must have a picture. Here, you know, what they could do is you take a picture, you get a biopsy of the tumor, and then you decide not to do anything, because a lot of men with prostate cancer, some of them say, you know, I'll just watch, I'll just wait, because I don't know. I mean, the surgery to remove it has a lot of side effects, so I'll just wait. And then they find out that it becomes cancerous. So now they can go back and say, okay, here is what it looked like in the precancerous stage. This is one we know that advanced to cancer. So now we have something we can compare non-cancerous tumors to, and take a picture and then make a judgment, make a better judgment.
You know, I kind of say that the pre thing in jest, but by precancerous or pre whatever, they have a good idea that things are starting to go bad, and there's some level of probability that things are going to become fully blown cancer or whatever. But yeah, I always thought it was just a funny thing, though. The pre-disease. But you know what? One of the things that's not funny is when you're told you have like a precancerous cells, people stress like it is cancer, and that affects their health. I don't know. That's
a real problem, particularly with men in my age brackets, 65, 70, 80. 80, at 80, they probably wouldn't do the surgery. But in the 60s and 70s, it's kind of a question mark. So you really don't know what to do because of the side effects of the surgery. So it's a difficult decision. I know, for instance, my uncle, he died of prostate cancer. Now, when he was first diagnosed, he opted for radiation treatment. And the radiation treatment worked 5, 6, 7 years, and then it came back and spread. Now his nephew, who was only in his 30s, got a diagnosis of a precancerous tumor. He said, get rid of it, because he just seen what happened to his uncle. That could have been the right decision, could have been an emotional decision.
Yeah, those are tough because they can't remember. Like a year ago, they talked about how many men have been disfigured because of the aggressive tact that they were taking, where watchful waiting would have been a better method of doing it, where, you know, just really, really tough. But I guess that's how we learn.
Think of breast cancer.
Yeah.
Women, you have more women who are opting to have a double mastectomy if, one, it runs to the family. And in some cases, there are some women who had the surgery done, even though there's no diagnosis of a precancerous condition, even, or a tumor, but they have it done because they know it runs in the family. Therefore, there's, I don't know, 50, 60, 70% chance they'll get it. And so they choose for the double mastectomy. And in that case, I guess, you can have breast reconstruction surgery done. So I don't know. That's pretty drastic surgery in any case.
Yeah. It is. What else you got? Making 3D objects disappear.
This is kind of a fun one. And now that the headline. The headline, of course, says, making 3D objects disappear. An invisibility cloak has created. Now, it's microscopic scale. Now, the one thing is, this isn't Hogwarts. This is the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, U.S. Department of Energy. I mean, these are people that do very high-grade science. So you can put some credibility behind the story. And there's a little picture. Can't really tell the scale. But scientists at the U.S. Department of Energy in Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and the University of California at Berkeley have devised an ultra-thin invisibility skin cloak that can conform to the shape of an object and conceal it from detection with visible light. Although this is a misleading, I don't like, this is a PR sentence. Although this cloak is only microscopic in size, the principle behind the technology should enable it to be upscaled to conceal microscopic items as well. That's kind of a leap.
Yeah.
If they said could instead of should, I'd buy it. But that's a leap. Because you're talking about, at this point, something on a very, very small scale.
Yep, the marketing department is all over this one.
Yes. Oh my God, I wonder what the headlines are going to be in some of the more popular newspapers. But again, this is institutions that are doing high-grade science and working with brick-like blocks of gold nano antennas. The Berkeley researchers fashioned a skin cloak barely 80 nanometers in thickness that was wrapped around a three-dimensional object about the size of a few biological cells and arbitrarily shaped with multiple bumps and dents. I mean, right off the bat, that's wow. They're working with something, a few biological cells, and they're wrapping something around it. Wow. The surface of the skin cloak was meta-engineered to reroute reflected light waves so that the object was rendered invisible to optical detection when the cloak was activated. This is the first time a 3D object of arbitrary shape has been cloaked from visible light. It says zing, zang. Zing, I don't know, it's X-I-A-N-G, Z-H-A-N-G. He's
Okay,
direct.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So you stick this thing under a microscope, and then, but you can't see it, right?
Well, you can see it until you, what do you do? You have to push a button or something. So it starts off being visible. I don't know. Somewhere here it talked about how the cloak has to be activated.
Okay.
So it has to be activated in some manner. I don't know if they explained how it gets activated later.
Okay.
Our ultra-thin cloak now looks like a coat. It's easy to design and implement and is potentially scalable for hiding macroscopic objects. Creating a carpet cloak that works in air was so difficult, we had to embed it in a dielectric prism that introduced an additional phase in the reflected light, which made the cloak visible by phase-sensitive detection.
Ugh.
I kind of hoping you might be able to explain that to me today.
Who knows?
I don't know what he just said. It sounds impressive. Recent developments In metasurfaces, however, allow us to manipulate the phase of a propagating wave directly through the use of sub-wave sized elements that locally tailor the electromagnetic response at the nanoscale, a response that is accompanied by a dramatic light confinement. Easy for him to say.
Yep.
In the Berkeley study, when red light struck an arbitrarily shaped 3D sample object measuring approximately 1,000 square microns in area, oh boy, that was conformally wrapped in the golden nano antenna skin cloak. The light reflected off the surface of the skin cloak was identical to light reflected off a flat mirror. So it's working, they know it's working in the same way as if this was light off a mirror. You can't see behind the mirror, you can't see behind this cloak, making the object underneath it invisible even by phase-sensitive detection. I don't know what that phase-sensitive detection is, but the cloak can now be turned on or off by switching the polarization of the nano antennas. A phase shift provided by each individual antenna fully restores both the wave front and the phase of the scattered light, so the object remains perfectly hidden. A couple more paragraphs here. The ability to manipulate the interactions between light and metamaterials offers tantalizing future prospects for technologies such as high-resolution optical microscopes and super-fast optical scanners. Invisibility skin cloaks of the micro scale might prove valuable for hiding the detailed layout of microelectronic components or security encryption devices at the macro scale, including other applications. Other applications.
Must be military.
Ah, yes, military.
So yeah, do you know what phase is?
Wavelength phases, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so if you have a line, straight line on an x-axis, and on that line you mark 0, 90, 180, etc. Where you start, if you start with your first wave at 0 and it crests at 90, comes back down again to the x-axis, and then continues on underneath, that's a sine wave. If you put another wave in opposing that, so instead of the bump going above the x-axis, but it's going directly below the x-axis, then that would be out of phase. So they essentially cancel each other out. So the light, if you have light reflecting off something, and you change the phase of it, it would cancel out, and or something like that. I'm not sure how they're doing it that, but that's basically how the phases work. So they're doing something with the phase of the wavelength of light that's hitting and reflecting off it.
Yeah, I don't understand it obviously, but you're talking about photons of light, and well, with the mirror, the photons get reflected off the surface and back, but you can see the mirror. In this particular case, the photons, because the object is out of phase in some manner, the photons, are the photons reflecting off it? Or is it the photons are out of phase and therefore they can't be observed?
I don't know.
Not sure about that. One thing I have to tell you, now the applications. Now, in the lab, this sounds like it could really help with research in a laboratory. I very much hope it is confined to the laboratory. The last thing in the world I want is for the military to get hold of a cloaking device. And you have to say, okay, when I was a kid, I will admit, in the back of some of the periodicals that talked about glasses, you could see through things, and you can hide, and all kinds of scenarios. I know, if they had an invisibility cloak, okay, Harry Potter, I'm cool with. Some of the people I can think of, not so cool with them having an invisibility cloak. And man, the military, it's a big moneymaker, because the military, U.S. military will get it, then the Russians will get it, and the U.S. military's got to be able to uncloak they got to get a non-cloaking device, and then the Russians got to get a non-cloaking device. That's a big moneymaker. I cannot see anything good coming out of this outside the lab.
I think you underestimate the military. I think they'd be very responsible with it and only use it under very, very particular circumstances.
Oh my God, can you imagine with the Department of Homeland Security got all of this?
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be scary. Oh boy.
This could be one of the worst, if in the hands of the wrong people, I think it's going to be one of the worst technological advances I can think.
I think in the hands of the right people. I don't think there are any right people with something like this.
No.
Well, it's coming someday.
Oh yeah, it's coming. I don't. Well, the problem is, if you're talking about a technology that can do two things: help the military, and is a big money maker, you're not going to be able to control it.
Yeah.
That's like trying to control drug use. It's not going to happen if people can make a buck out of it. So we'll have to see. Be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be a good time to be hanging out watching the breakthrough.
How in the world can you even go in public? Restrooms and things? It's just very scary scenarios here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe the next thing is they'll learn how to shrink us down so we don't need big ones. They'll just make us small and then we'll crawl into these little nano cloaks.
That'd be cool. If you could adapt chameleon-like processes to your own skin, do with your skin what a chameleon can do, that'd be pretty cool.
Yep. Yep. Well, hey, unfortunately I can only do one more. I'm not back online with my sleep yet. My regular hours from the weekend there. We had that training weekend, and oh boy, messed up my circadian rhythm.
Okay. Let's see. Where's an intro? Let's see. We've got. Well, very quickly, I mentioned in the beginning about these idiots in a Denver park taking selfies close to a bear. I don't know what you can say about that other than it's pretty stupid.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one.
And your survival training, Gail. Did you see down on the list of survival techniques anywhere? Bringing a selfie stick with you?
Yeah, we all had selfie sticks. We were all looking for bears. That's part of it. Not.
The two stories, and I can touch briefly on them since you're not going to, without going into a lot of detail. The first one talks about how poor diet and high blood pressure are now the primary risk factors for an early death. Now, I will include in the YouTube video show notes to all of these, so you can have the opportunity to read the stories at your leisure. The primary thing to me is that these are all the primary factors we can control. We don't need any fancy new technology. We don't need any great new medicine. Just got to eat better. These are things we can do to make our health better. So that's my main point about that. These primary risk factors are things we can control, and we're just not controlling them. An interesting story, and this will be the last one. Hopefully you'll make it through the story before you fall asleep, Dale.
I really apologize.
Okay, it's all right. We got through close to an hour here, almost an hour. That's okay. Last week we didn't even have a hangout because Justin and Pamela were sick. So we got ourselves a hangout.
Awesome.
Most viewers only watch the first 10 minutes anyway.
Yeah, okay.
So the rest of it's mostly for us. And Mike, who's in the chat area. Hi, Mike. Now we're talking about the morphology of flowers. We're talking about the symbiotic relationship between flowers and pollinators. And this talks about flowers. Now it says, tricking male insects into pollinating their flowers by producing chemicals that precisely mimic female insect sex hormones, pheromones. According to the study, since the discovery that the floral scent of these remarkable orchids mimic female sex pheromones, many of these compounds have been made in the lab. When you apply these chemicals to objects, even objects that look nothing like female insects, males will attempt to mate with them, so many people assume that it's the scent alone that matters. But this is a guy from Australian National University. And Australia is home to some of the world's species of sexually deceptive orchids. And among them are two different but closely related species of orchid pollinated by two different species of wasps. But although the flowers of these two orchids look different, they produce the same chemical to attract the male. These small orchids, they live in a moist forest of southeastern Australia. A very complex and strikingly different flower morphologies. To find out whether flower morphology was deceiving the wasp, the researcher presented males of each species with both orchids, the one it normally pollinates and one it does not normally pollinate. And they recorded the wasp's behavior and whether or not they would try to mate with either or both of the orchids. They found that even though orchids produce the same chemical attractant, the male wasps of both species behave differently towards each orchid. So there was more involved than simply a chemical pheromone. What it comes down to is that these specific moths, probably it's the pollinator driving the orchid flower evolution. And so it's not just the scent, it's the look, it's a symbiotic relationship almost between a specific moss and a specific flower. And these symbiotic relationship between different species, how they evolve, is just amazing. Can you think of the time it would have taken? I mean, the pollinator, it picks a particular flower because of particular characteristics, and then over time, the flowers that it's most attracted to are the ones that reproduce the most, and you wind up with this very precise relationship between the two.
Yeah.
And it made me think of, it's one of my favorite stories in evolution, prediction. One of the things, you know, a theory is correct because you can make predictions using it. In Darwin finding this particular orchid, and it had a very long stem. And the reproduction organs, instead of being at the top of the stem, or insects could get, or moths and things could get to it, was at the bottom of the stem. And he made the prediction there was a moth that had a proboscis over a foot long that could get into the stem to pollinate the plant. No such moth was in existence. 90 years later, time-lapse photography, they found this moth that Darwin had predicted 90 years previously that had a proboscis over a foot long.
It's too bad he wasn't around to see that.
Amazing. Okay.
All right. I'm fading away, not because of you, because of my silly weekend adventure. Still haven't caught up.
Okay. Catch up with your rest.
I will.
Hopefully next week Justin's back and health issues will be gone and Pamela will be around and we'll be busy. So we'll have well, it's not really a short hangout. It's about a 45-minute long hangout. Lots of interesting stories we got to. And I will bring it to an end and hopefully see you next week, Dale, and then hopefully both Justin and Pamela will be able to join us.